Hello Year 11, Mr. Colin here. I'm going to talk to you about revision and take you through some steps that hopefully over the course of the next few weeks you can use to benefit you when you're revising at home and indeed with your peers, your friends and members of your family. So I'll take you through my PowerPoint and the top tips that might help you improve your results through positive revision. So the first question is to think about what types of revision are you doing? What types of revision work for you? And you can see on the screen there are a number of different various revision techniques. It's really important to think about which of these is of a high value, a medium value, or a low value in terms of the approach. Which one is going to get the most for you in terms of revision? So let's have a little think. As you look around those aspects of revision, those different types of revision, what would you say works best for you? Let's have a little look at what the evidence says. So as you're sitting there watching this, or you're discussing it maybe with your friends, or you're asking for help through your parents or carers, have a little think and look at what is not suggested to be useful or supportive in terms of revision on its own or just isolated. So on the right hand side, you can see that just reading your class notes is not going to get you the best informed information into your brain in terms of your revision technique. Spending hours and hours and hours on what you need to revise, cramming it all in before the night of the exam, will also not get you the best results. Or maybe making what we call mnemonics, where you have anagrams that remember various different aspects of learning. Richard of York, for example. That's okay, but not going to be the best technique. Likewise, as we move across the screen and look at the amber, the ones that are a bit effective, like underlining the notes in your book or highlighting key things, again, works in part. But as we move over to the screen where the yellow and the grey are suggesting those effective techniques, those really effective techniques, you can start to see that they're combining techniques with other techniques really help your brain, your memory, learn and remember. So summarising your notes that you've made in class, rewriting your notes, going over the things that you've already learnt before, for example, you then make flashcards to use as revision techniques, that's a really effective way of revising. Making mind maps of the things you've already learnt in class to remind yourself and go over your learning, and then testing yourself or indeed your friends around lunchtime table, around conversations online, at home. That's really effective. And then of course revising each topic, but little and often. And we'll talk about that in terms of a breakdown in a second. So let's think about those effective ways combined with each other and split it into three sections. Prepare, learn and practice. Those three techniques will help you to be successful in your revision. So let's focus on the prepare aspect first, where we revise little and often. In terms of being able to organise yourself, it's really important that you maybe think about creating a revision timetable. Your revision should be chunked up into roughly 20-minute slots, but we're not talking about 20 minutes per day of one subject. You should be aiming to do 4 to 6 chunks of 20 minutes per night, and you might do that on a given topic. For example, you might do 20 minutes of revision on your English literature and then focus on the characters in the first 20 minutes. You might then break and in the next 20 minutes focus on the next part of that English literature text and then the next part and so on. you may decide to break some of those things down and focus on other topics, other subjects within the course of those 4 to 6 chunks. And that's the timetable that you can see suggested in front of you. Obviously, there's lots of information to choose from. You can ask your teacher. You can talk through information that's needed or that's important. You can attend one of the revision sessions that's either happening in the February half term or the Easter half term, or in lunch times or after school or before school. And as you start to build the revision knowledge that you need, use things like the knowledge organisers from your class. Use things like your Google Classroom, the online resources that have been shared with you by your teachers like GCSE Pod or Tassomai, aspects of Seneca, Hecate Maths, to build the information you need. Your teachers will be able to give you that information in a clear and helpful way, so please ask. In terms of then your prepared aspect, you can move to your learning. Once you know how you're going to revise, you need to know what you're going to revise. It's really important that you revise knowledge and then recap it. The knowledge you've already been taught in class. Don't just simply start making flashcards or writing down notes, because that's not, if we remember, the most effective way to work the best in terms of revision. Revise the key knowledge. That's summarising your notes, make mind maps, and then recap. That effective note-taking and way in which we think about the knowledge is important. So to help you understand how you might do that, we're going to look at a summarising method. Now, this is called the Cornell method. And if you're watching this at home with maybe a parent or carer, sit down together and look through how they suggest is the most effective in terms of revision using this particular method for summarising.
Now, we're just going to start with a sheet of paper like you would for any type of note-taking. It can be any type of sheet of paper. It might even have lines, and that's okay, as long as you have it large enough that you can take normal notes on. You're going to go ahead and take your sheet of paper. Now divide it into 4 quadrants or sections, just like this. Make sure you have only a little bit at the top, enough for maybe 1 or 2 lines at most. On the side, you're going to have a couple inches. For writing, maybe small notes, and on the bottom you're going to have about the same size. Now on the far right is going to be your largest section, and that's where most of your main notes are going to go. So keep that for later, okay? After you've created those 4 sections, go ahead and at the top, title these notes. So whatever helps keep your mind or your notes organized, go ahead and put that information, whether it be your name, a class that you took, the subject of these notes, the date, whatever helps you, go ahead and do that. After you've documented at the top of the page with those 1 or 2 lines about your name, the class that you took, or whatnot, you're going to go ahead and take your main notes. Now those go in the big section over on the right-hand side. Don't be afraid, however, to space those notes out. Kind of synthesize a little bit. Don't write every single word that you hear or read or watch in a video. Go ahead and try to just put the most important information there. Also give yourself leeway. Skip every other line in case you have to come back and edit or put some like notes inside those margins. Don't be afraid to space it out. Give yourself some room. As soon as you finish taking the bulk of your notes over on the right-hand side, you're going to go and take some time to review and clarify. This simply means you're reviewing the notes that you've just taken, and now you're going to synthesize them even smaller to just the main points, the most important aspects of the lecture you just heard, the book you just read, whatnot. Go ahead and put those in the far left-hand side. Give yourself some space once again. Don't be afraid to skip every other line if you have to. Once we've reviewed our notes on the far right-hand side and then clarified them on the left-hand side, we're going to summarize down here at the bottom. Now, what does that look like? It's pretty straightforward. Imagine you've seen a movie and you want to describe it to your friends. How would you, in 1 or 2 sentences, describe that whole movie? Or perhaps you've been to a large Wikipedia page. At the top, they have a summarization of the next 2 to 3 pages. go ahead and approach it that way. Which brings us to our last point, study. We want to focus most of our time studying this left-hand column over here and our summarization down at the bottom. The left-hand column are all our key points, our main ideas that will likely end up on the test in the form of questions. The summarization at the bottom is an overarching storyline, essentially. It's the brief breakdown of whatever happened in the notes over on the right-hand side. Mastering both of those sections will set us up for the most success on the test. Good luck, and thanks for watching.
So really helpful method in terms of getting our main points down, putting them into those key lists, summarizing them, and retaining them in terms of our knowledge. Making record cards to kind of summarize those key facts is also then really helpful. That organization of knowledge, that organization of understanding, put into some form of record can help you then come back to that information that you've got and recap it in the way in which you might find the most effective. It's also important to be able to talk through, to be able to articulate, speak through the things that you've studied, you've understood. And you can do that quickly and easily with people at home that you might want to talk through the understanding of your revision with, your parents, your friends, your carers, and then they can help identify with you the areas that you're still a bit rusty on, the areas that you still can't talk really confidently on. And you can go back and you can think about those gaps in knowledge so that you can become really, really, really secure on your memory skills, that sense of being supreme at what you know. Let's look at practice then. We've got everything prepared. We understand what we need to learn. And now we're going to really recap. We're going to practice and test ourselves so that we know that that knowledge is really firmly in our brains. You can self-test. You can quiz yourself. This is really effective method of recapping all that information through the things like flashcards, which we've already talked about, through the things like testing yourselves with talking to friends, and of course revising each topic. And remember, that's about little and often, chunking that through in those 20-minute slots and sessions. Every day, all the time, quizzing through things that you've remembered will help you become super effective. In terms of flashcards, it's quite easy to just make notes on small bits of paper that may not make sense or that may not be formulated, constructed or put together in the right way. So let's just think about flashcards that work. And this example will hopefully help you understand the best way to make those flashcards. So a really useful way there to construct flashcards and use a technique to really practice and focus how you recap information and go over it throughout a week, really testing yourself with those answers you get right and those ones that you need to reflect back on. Practicing exam questions are also a really useful technique. If you do want to practice exam questions, it's important to practice those under similar conditions or the same conditions that you might get within the actual exam. Focus on how you answer and structure your answers in terms of your learning and how you are demonstrating within the question what you know. As part of that, you can always bring those test questions in, those exam questions in, and get your teacher to recap those, relook and mark them to give you feedback. That's a really useful way to also show that you are revising to your teacher. Whatever you choose to do, however you choose to do it, revising is one of the key things that you can use to ensure your best success within exams. You can be whatever you want to be, and it's your opportunity within the next 8 to 9 weeks to put yourself ready to be successful and to know that your next steps towards college, work or an apprenticeship were the best that you could possibly give yourself. So whatever you're doing over this half term, have a think and engage in revision. Make sure you recap this video and think about what works best and use those techniques to be really successful. Be the best versions of yourselves, Year 11, and have a very good half term. We'll see you when we come back with all of your revision techniques started and been worked on in a really hard way.